just check my mic a quick second. Wow, whoever had turned it on, Annika, you rock. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm a little emotional about all this. How ridiculous. I'm so happy to see your faces, so thank you so much for the support. It means the world. So, we'll stop that nonsense. So tonight I thought I'd talk about confessions. I'm an ADHD author, and how many people actually have read the book so far? Okay, so you knew in the book I've done a lot of confessing, and so a lot of this is going to make sense as I kind of give you the input. So I studied my family for a full year. And what happened is, they're like, yeah, we know now. What happened is I got a book contract, cool. And then I had to figure out what to put in it. And so one of the girls would call and say, oh, this is what's happening. And in my head, I'm like, how interesting. And I'd say, tell me more. And so sure enough, they would tell me more. I'm like, so do you think this is related to your ADHD? If so, how? And so they gave me a lot of my material. We actually have a code for every time they show up in a book, not mentioned as a daughter, and they know the code. So thanks, guys. You've been in it a lot, and in all seriousness, I couldn't have done this without my family. They are incredibly supportive, and as an ADHD tribe, we kind of rock it. So they bring the fun, the laughter, and really a lot of the deep insight. So if you would just a second, thank my family with me by clapping. But honestly, I couldn't have done that without them. So confession number 2. Chapter 10 was really hard to write, and a lot of times it made me really sad. And I couldn't figure out how to put the words to this and how to talk about it. And so I did one of the things that I tell my clients to do. I set a timer, I wrote for a little bit, and then I played with my dogs. And sometimes I played with my dogs for 20 minutes. Sometimes I played with them for 40. But Gracie, the main dog right there, the stoic looking one, she's in charge. She really helped me work through a lot of the ideas in chapter 10. So I should have dedicated that whole chapter just to Gracie. When I first started writing, I hated my voice. This voice, indeed, but also my voice, my writing voice. And I don't know if you guys have ever had that happen where you're like, wow, I sound like an idiot on paper. And by the way, all the ADHD people just neurotypical people, I know who you are because you're like, really? Is that a thing? I just know who you are and who we are. Okay, it's all good. We love each other. But anyway, I started by hating my voice, and I had discussions with the acquisitions editor at Rebel, and she's like, "Listen, drop that academic voice. No one wants it." I'm like, okay, but that's my grown-up voice that makes me sound very important and smart. And who am I without it? And so then I had to figure out, how am I going to sound on paper? One of the best compliments I've gotten is from someone who said, you know what, I could just hear you talking. And at first I'm like, well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? But they went on to say, yeah, that worked for me. So this whole process was about me learning to accept my voice. And that was no small thing. There's a lot of times that I almost didn't finish this project because I just got tired of talking to myself. And so, by the way, it's actually good to talk to live humans. I've been talking on Zoom for so long, I'm like, wow, is this what it's like again? So, confession. The pressure for me to be a grown-up is real. And those of you who have ADHD know the pressure I'm talking about. Those of you who are neurotypical just smile and nod. We spend most of our lives pretending that we're grown-ups. And so I know I'm not a grown-up because I still wave my hand, pretending I'm a Jedi Knight when I walk through a sliding automatic door. And that's just my little life. And if you ever watch me, I just do that, and it just feels really good. So, and I like the magic of that. A lot of this book is about struggling to appear like a grown-up. And for those of us with ADHD, modern life is exhausting. Looking normal is exhausting. And pretending that we have it together, just like being on time, knowing how to reply, going to bed on time, those basics is really just tiring us out every day. So 5 weeks ago, I panicked. And here's how it happened. I was reading a book, or I was looking for a book to read on Audible. And I'm like, well, you know what, let's look for a new title. I just want something to read. And so I'm flipping through, and it's one of those times when it's kind of a cold, rainy day, you don't want to get out of bed anyway. So I'm flipping through the Audible. I'm like, oh, this one looks promising. I'll read the reviews of it, and it'll tell me whether or not I should read it. And so I started reading the reviews. I'm like, wow, these people are harsh. I'm so glad I'm not an author. And then it hit me, oh crap, I'm an author, and people are going to be writing things. And so that really got in my mind for a while. Those of you who have ADHD, you totally know what happened. I popped down the deepest, darkest rabbit holes, and I imagined the worst things people could say to me. By the way, neurotypicals is fine, I'm fine. But ADHD people, you knew for a while how scary it was. So I did something I tell my clients to do. I wrote the worst review I could think of, and it was funny. I ended up laughing about it. It's like, the book is trash, the author's trash, everyone's trash. And I'm like, oh, as long as it's not this review, I think I'm okay. And so that's how I overcame that. And a lot of you who have ADHD, you know that fear of rejection. And so if you're here tonight and you don't have ADHD, I want you to know that rejection sensitivity is a real thing that we experience. I worked with 5 clients today, and 5 out of 5 today talked about rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And so the rejection sensitivity, I can see some of you going, what is she talking about? Again, ADHD people, I know you know this. For those of you who don't have ADHD, it's our anticipation of being rejected. It's almost like we want to go through the world going, are you mad at me? Have I let you down? If so, how many times? And we just keep going through that in our minds. And that's why the reviewers kind of got in my head. But you know what? I coached myself, I got through it. And then 2 weeks ago, I freaked out again. This is a totally different time. This time, and these freakouts, like, they were kind of panicky. My husband's back there, and he can attest to me going, I don't feel good about this. This is all wrong. And so 2 weeks ago, I was wondering if they would just take the book off the shelves and recall it all, because I realized I had said too much. Like, we need to take this all back. And so for those of you who've read the book, you know, like, I admit to things. So I'm just going to get one of them out of the way now. I admit that on a hot summer day, I get into the car, and the car is super hot, and I get super angry about it. And see, those of you with ADHD are like, well, that's kind of normal. Those of you without ADHD are thinking, what is that about? Yeah, I see her face. Literally, her face was like, I don't understand this. It's because our emotions tend to manage us sometimes when we're not thinking about it. So, yeah, I confessed a lot of things. And so 2 weeks ago, again, I had to talk myself off the ledge. I was really, really nervous. Too much was in there. So the first couple copies went out and I was starting to get feedback. And feedback was, you know what, I'm really getting what you're saying. So I talked myself off the ledge again. This time I'm like, hey, you were vulnerable so that other people can understand and feel and know that other people feel the same way. So that's that confession. How are you doing so far with confessions? One more?
Yeah.
One more confession. This one is a sappy one. I could have done this without my clients. They were like cheering me on every step of the way. And they'd be like, how's the book coming? I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna give up the project anytime. And they're like, oh, of course not. And they spoke truth to me, which really was unsettling because I was supposed to be the coach, but they were really kind and generous. And I really could not have done it without them. So there are a few clients in the audience, and I just want to thank you. And if you would just for a moment, thank them with me by clapping because they're great. The reason I think my clients are heroes is when you go through, excuse me, when you go through life having ADHD, it's kind of like an invisible handicap. And I'm not saying this so like, oh, for us, but it's actually when you're time blind or when your emotions can take a sudden shift just by getting into a warm car on a hot, Sunday afternoon, you're at a severe disadvantage. And every day I see clients like really working through the disadvantages. And so they're really heroes. And I leave my coaching sessions going, wow, I'm so fortunate to have worked with them. Again, that's sappy. And that's, I can't begin to say just how incredibly grateful I've been to know the people that I know on this journey. So now is time for any questions. If I don't know the answers, I'll just make up answers. Becky might be walking through with the mic. Yeah. Or if you shout, maybe I can hear too. Guys, don't make this awkward. Okay, thank you.
How long did your project take?
Thanks for asking. So quick story. You're like, I didn't ask for a story, I asked for a time, but he knows me. So quick story, I got the idea to write a book. I was feeling like I should write a book, talking to my husband about writing the book, and it just kind of, I don't know, kept stalling out. And one day we were in church, and our pastor was talking. It was a circular stage, and he was talking about, what do you want to do for God? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, I can tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to write a book. And he's talking, and he's getting energetic, and he pivots, looks at our session, and says, he's naming like, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? And he pivots and looks and says, or a book. And I sat there and thought, I don't think that actually just happened. And my husband leans over and goes, well, that just happened. So I started the proposal that afternoon. And that afternoon, I started to write it and put it together. The first proposal I put to Rebel, they're like, nah, we don't want that one. But we do want an ADHD book, we just don't want the one you propose. I'm like, cool, what do you want? And he said, just a general book about ADHD. Like, well, that's easier than I thought it was. So I got the book contract in November of 2019, and it took 11 months to write. I had COVID during that time, sinus infections during that time, pandemic things too. So yeah, thanks for asking, Brandy.
Are you gonna make a kids version?
You know what? I would love to make a kids version. I've been thinking about that. What do you think? Yeah, would you read it? Okay, if you read it, I will write it. Well, okay, I can't promise because I need a publisher to do that, but I'll do my best for you. Thank you.
I know you just accumulated another book you have to write, but knowing you have your background in leadership coaching too and all the ADHD brilliance, do you see weaving those together in the future for another kind of narrative for another audience too, maybe?
You know what? Honestly, I was thinking about that. I just did an interview for a podcast where everyone was asking me about ADHD. And I was saying, you know, I know about leadership too. And I think leaders and ADHD is an interesting topic, and I'd love to explore that. I think what I'm going to do first is write an article about it and see if it gets picked up somewhere. Like I said, picked up somewhere, like I know what that means. I'm an author. By the way, the truth is, saying author still sounds super weird because if you guys know me, you know I trip over my words and I really can't make words sound pretty. So it's still kind of a new identity. I think you're asking about the title.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm just curious about the title. I mean, I know what it means to me as a mom. And as we've discussed, I probably have ADHD too. But yeah, I know when it was diagnosed, she asked me what it meant. She said, that was the hyperactivity
Hold it a little bit closer.
disorder, you know, and that word disorder.
Yeah.
So
Hope, can I point you out? Yeah. All right, that little cutie back there is Hope. And she's one of the people that I think when we were meeting one time, I really said, your brain's not broken. And am I remembering that? Did I actually say that to you? Okay, good. It'd be totally awkward if you can tell me later if you're just not a speak like. But anyway, it's something I do say to people because we do go through life just feeling really broken, really out of step, really unable to manage things, especially the stupid little grown-up details of life. And so I wanted everyone to know that their brain wasn't broken. To me, it's a hopeful message. And my son-in-law, Adam, actually helped me come up with the title. He's not here tonight, but I called him like, I don't like any of the titles that are proposed. And I was being a bit dramatic, and Adam is not dramatic. He's very calm. He asked me some questions, and he said, you know, something I hear you say a lot is, your brain's not broken. And I'm like, I say that? And he's like, yes. I'm like, that's a great title, Adam. Thank you. So that's really the story behind the story of the title. So thanks, Hope.
Why is the E different?
Wait, say it louder.
Why is the E different?
Why is the E different? You know what? Why do you think the E's different? Okay, it's okay. I don't know either, but I think it's okay that the E's different. I think it tries to convey that we're not perfect, but we're still working. Because you can still read it, right? And so we can still get through life. We just have a crooked E. I think that's kind of why. I thought it was very clever of the designer to come up with that. I had nothing to do with it, but loved it when I saw it. Right? By the way, did you notice that the brain is kind of flying apart on that? Yeah, that's kind of how I feel on a daily basis. Yeah, do you too? Yeah, it's good to see you too. All right. All right, you're a low talker. You're gonna have to yell at me.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
it's really good to see you. I didn't get to greet you before.
So for your title, I mean, I'm only halfway through the book, but I know that you're trying to put a spin on it that it doesn't have to be such a negative thing.
Can everyone hear what she's saying? Okay, cool, cool. You guys still better hearing too. Okay. keep going.
If I can remember what I was about to say.
I'm sorry, I did it. Try to put a spin on it that it doesn't have to be negative.
Yes. So I'm part of Facebook support groups, and every once in a while I'll see posts about how they don't like the name, they don't like deficit and disorder. So my question is, would you rename it, and what would you name it?
Well, you did a little, I thought you were going one way, you went another way. Wow. I want to answer the one I thought you were asking. That's easier. But I'll answer yours. So the DSM is at least 20 years behind in research and in any understanding of ADHD, which means we're not diagnosing people well. It's really sad when TikTok describes ADHD better than the diagnostic style manual does. And so that's a very unfortunate thing. It does need to be renamed. Ed Hallowell, I'm sure you've come across his name. He's a super positive guy. He wants to name it something. It's like Veers. The problem with, and April knows this, the problem with ADHD isn't that we don't have an attention deficit. We have too much attention disease. And I wouldn't name it that, by the way. But the problem is we pay attention everywhere. So it clearly needs to be renamed. About 5 years ago, they were saying, well, maybe we could call it executive function disorder. And now all the research is like, no, we have these big emotions. We don't know what to do with those either. So stay tuned. I think people much smarter than I will pose a name, convince the DSM to do it, and they'll get her done. So, good answer? Okay. All right. She's looking like, I want an actual answer. Here's where I thought April was going to go. I am trying to put a positive spin on ADHD, but at the same time, I'm trying to be very realistic. It is really, let me put it this way, we're ill-equipped for the modern world. And if you put us like on a desert island and we had to hunt for things and figure out things, we are geniuses at improv. But put us in modern life with alarm clocks, I wear a watch to keep me on task. We struggle.
What are the, because you just said that you can improv really well and stuff too, what do you see yourself, your children, your clients, what are just positives? What are you like, this is a gift, I can do this or function this way, other people don't see things this way?
Yeah. Okay, that's a great question, Lisa. First, I'm going to be super negative. All the positives I see in my clients have nothing to do with ADHD. It has to do with the strength of their character, that they're so strong that they decide that ADHD won't stop them, or they dig into their personality. They're like, look, I have rejection sensitivity, but I'm going to show courage anyway. So the ADHD doesn't present it, but the research does show that we have one strength and one thing that we can do better than neurotypicals. But the problem is that one strength gets us into bad trouble. So our strength is called divergent thinking. And divergent thinking is when you can take one idea and blow it up into 50 directions. And the ADHD people are like, just 50? Because they can take an idea and blow it up into tons and trillions. And whereas a neurotypical person, they do the convergent thinking, one idea leads to the next logical idea, and so on. We're like ping, 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 all over the place. And so we look wildly creative, and we can be, but the problem is we get so stuck in the divergent thinking mode that we never really pull out to reality and make those things happen. And so that's why it is, we're great. If you ever want a new idea, ask an ADHD person. You'll have 50 of them. You don't even want 50 of them. You're like, I just wanted one. You're like, that's okay, it's a bonus. They're all like happy that you asked. So that is the thing we do. So Lisa, do you mind if I comment about you a little bit? It's nice, I promise. I borrow Lisa's prefrontal cortex, you know, that brain that's very logical. I borrow it all the time. And I try to sound nonchalant, like, well, Lisa, what would you do in this case? And she's very sweet. She's like, well, and she tells me what she would do. And I'm sorry to embarrass you, but if you have ADHD, you know you have a Lisa in your life, right? And all ADHD people are like, yeah, and I need her or him. So I'm sorry if I embarrass you. I'll look away now. But that's exactly, people in our lives help us when they don't even know how much they're helping us. And I want you to know your ADHD friends are so grateful for those helps. Lauren is another one, or my little daughter who doesn't have ADHD. I'm always like, Lauren, so what time do you think I should leave here? And then she talks, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, totally. So she's had that function in my life too. So to all the people who've been prefrontal cortexes for me, I really appreciate it. And I want you to know how much you help your ADHD people in your life. Any other questions? Bethany?
Can you talk a little bit about how ADHD, how your personality affects the way your ADHD manifests? Like, there's a lot of us. I know that's the book you wanted to write.
That is the book I wanted to write.
I know.
Actually, yeah. So Bethany was asking, how does ADHD and personality, how do they go together? What happens is I'd like to ask you to think about them as circles that overlap in a Venn diagram. So we have our personality, we have our ADHD, and they overlap. For example, in my personality, I tend to have an impulsive personality. Oh, well, wait, in the other circle, my ADHD circle, impulsivity is part of that too. So when they meet, I'm really, really impulsive. And so I know that those two paths coming together could really be trouble. And so I put myself on high alert for impulsivity. Some of my clients, they have kind of anxiety built into their personality. The world is already big for them. They're already worried. And then anxiety comes along and goes, yeah, it is a really scary world. I think you're right. And then when that overlaps, that's a huge problem for my clients in that way. So that's a short answer. I use, a lot of times I use the Enneagram to talk about personality and to help my clients understand what's in their personality circle and what's overlapping with their ADHD. Thanks, Bethany.
One of the things I like about your book, especially as it compares to other books about ADHD or neuropsychology, is that it's very just like simple to read and practical and human and helpful anecdotes. Was it a conscious choice to go that route and not like clinical and granular, or was it just kind of natural?
Well, you know, the editors weren't going to publish it if it were clinical and granular. And so they forced my hand. They're like, talk like a human or we're not publishing it. By the way, I was, you know, to make it through grad school, you have to learn how not to talk like a human. And so I would get these comments back. I worked with a writing coach to kind of relearn how to write. And so I would get these comments. This sounds a bit academic or too academic, which you just got tired of reminding me. So that means I would have to go back and rewrite it. And that's where my dog racing came in. Because I figured if I could explain it to my dog, it will translate for other people too. I'm not calling any of you dogs, I just heard how that came out. I'm sorry. That's not what I meant to do. So, but yeah, thank you. And I'm glad you find it readable. My goal was to find it accessible. And my hope was that everyone who has ADHD could find themselves in the book. Because I feel like sometimes we're lonely. And so if you can find yourself and know that, yeah, my brain's not broken there.
At one point there was ADD and then there was ADD with hyperactivity.
Yep.
And if you're focusing on the ADHD part of it.
Okay, yep. So you're asking, what's up with the name, the acronyms?
Right.
Yeah.
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 It is ADD incorporated into ADHD.
Yes. So back in the olden days, it was just called ADD. And then we started learning more about it. Oh, there's this hyperactivity component. So they said, oh, some people are ADD, some people are ADHD. And now the DSM, the Diagnostic Sound Manual, calls everything ADHD. And the key is we're all hyperactive. Some of us are externally hyperactive. The rest of us are internally. I happen to be both. Some of you are both too. So it means your head's going fast and your body moves fast. And you bump into things. Yes, and that's why I call it the top ridge. So yeah, so good question.
You teach a lot of strategies or in self-awareness. Is there a time when ADHD people over the years with using those strategies that life gets easier for them?
That's a
Or is
great
there
question.
no
Did everyone hear that question? Does it ever get easier? So yes, for some people. And I'll start with the good news. There's some good research coming out about medicating younger children with stimulants. And what happens is their neurons start to connect sooner, more blood flow goes up here. It's a very exciting thing. And we're seeing with those children, they look like they grow out of their ADHD. And I use my air quotes because they don't really grow out of it if you watch them. But having ADHD is almost imperceptible to a lot of people. So that's the good news. The bad news is that happens maybe 20% of the time. So the bad news is now we just have to keep working really hard. And we do learn strategies and we do work hard, but the truth is having ADHD is difficult. So I know that's not very encouraging, but he loves someone with ADHD and he's saying, seriously, it's not going to get easier? The research is once we get out of our 20s, we get more comfortable using the strategies, or we can get more comfortable, and we do get better at life. Carson, what are you going to throw at me, sir?
I was just curious how young it had to be for that synapses to start growing.
Say that again.
How young does it have to be for the neurons to start connecting properly?
Okay, so I'll answer that one-on-one.
Okay.
But it has to do with blood flow.
Okay.
People with prefrontal cortices have either immature, like a prefrontal cortex is very immature, or it just doesn't get enough blood. For whatever reason, when we send blood there, then that encourages the growth.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yep. And I know we're going to talk about more about that one. So
Thank you.
yes. All right, oh,
But for someone like myself, who's very cynical by nature,
really? I never even noticed. It's okay.
I can easily see how people have a hard time believing that humans actually exist like this. Like if I had lived my whole life with ADD, I would have a tough time believing that this is how something would work for life. Do you have like a go-to tactic for helping parents or loved ones? I guess how to convince them.
Yeah. I love that question. And, you know, I know I just low-key mocked you for being cynical, but I'm cynical too. And there's times I hear myself going, and if I didn't have ADHD, I'd just say, suck it up and move on. And I really think that too. So here's what I do. I work with a lot of parents, as you guys know, and sometimes parents come in and go, fix my kid. And by the way, none of them are in this room tonight, okay? So don't worry about that. But they say, fix my kid. And I really, at that point, or fix my husband, or fix my wife. And that's a hard thing because the neurotypical person saying, that person is broken and they need to fix it. Now, I do want to be kind to the neurotypical person because we're a handful sometimes. I use the metaphor, especially with parents. I say, imagine that your child were born missing half a leg, but no one can see it. And so you bring your child to field day and you say, run, kid, run. And the child keeps tripping and falling, but you can't see that they're missing half a leg. So you're like, what's your problem? Why can't you run hurdles like the rest of the kids? Why can't you jump up the stairs like the rest of the kids? And it's very, very frustrating to have this kind of invisible thing that it makes us so that we can't move as easily. A lot of times parents will start to grasp that idea. And then I say, but your kid is running. That's pretty amazing because there's no reason your kid should be running at all. And so let's first look at why are they even doing anything? Why are they even looking like they can run like a normal person? And so usually that helps. And then I go into, for those of you that know me, I have brains in each office and I take the brain and like, this is part of the brain, here's what's missing. By the way, we're not literally missing it, it's just we don't have reliable use to this part of our brain. So thanks for asking that question. I also get the question about medication, like is medication really necessary? If I'm feeling sassy that day, I'll say, I don't know, are your glasses really necessary? Most days I'm very calm and explain it, but there's some days I just get kind of sassy. So thanks for the question.
Why do you think that's easier beyond
I'm sorry, just yell at me, huh?
why do you think it's easier beyond your 20s to function?
Yeah. Because by that time, because of the brain's neuroplasticity, we've learned shortcuts and we've learned how to not actually rewire our brain, but kind of re-access our brain to get things done. And so I see a dramatic increase in what people can do in their 30s as they start to grow into their brain. Plus all the identity development stuff, hopefully, is kind of wrapped up in their 20s. So there's hope. Everyone who's not in their 30s yet, there's a lot of hope. The cement starts to dry a bit.
So, as you know, I recently.
Wait, I cannot hear you, and I really want to hear your question. And I'm panicking because I'm like, there's no hope. Okay, all right, good. Becky's there.
So, I'm in social, and I currently have been experiencing burnout. So as I started, evaluating the burnout and with the ADHD, I'm trying to, reconcile like both, and I just feel like I'm exhausted.
Yep.
So, how do they correlate, or is it different
Yes.
for a person with ADHD as opposed to?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the research on this, and I'll connect a couple things. Those of us with ADHD have quirky nervous systems. And quirky is a nice way to say, wow, we're really overreactive in our nervous system. And kind of the root of our nervous system, the limbic center, confuses what's a big deal and what's a small deal. And that's kind of the definition of ADHD. And so a lot of us experience burnout. We experience burnout quicker and more deeply than our neurotypical peers. Now that you know that though, you can start to address it as, hey, this is a nervous system issue. My brain gets confused. How do I, one, replenish my nervous system? But two, also kind of start to sort out what is really a big deal worth my mental and emotional energy, and what do I need to leave at the door every time I leave my office? That's a little simplistic for your question, but I think that is going to get you started. So, all right. Oh,
So you run a coaching.
yellow, you win.
Sounds louder than that. So you run a coaching center. Can you tell us what the difference is between counseling and coaching, and why coaching works for ADHD?
Yeah. So he happens to be sitting next to one of the coaches. So he has some inside information here. When all the coaches from the ADHD Center just stand up a second. Sorry, guys, I didn't warn you. Doing this here. But these are excellent coaches. And we also have a speech pathologist and a therapist who are not in this country at this time. Not because of this, they weren't fleeing this, they were just doing something else. So we do have a lot of services, but ADHD coaching, the research on it is compelling because many of us really don't have therapeutic issues. We really just can't figure out how to think through the daily details of life. And so what therapy does is go, whoa, how did you get here? Let's dig into that closet and figure this out. Coaching's like, let's just keep that closet closed and move forward. And that's essentially, so we figure out the problem solving. How do you actually, what do you want to do and how do you get there? And so that's what coaching does. The irony is, the research is showing coaching is very effective. All the coaches in the center have heard, wow, I've been to a therapist for years and it didn't help me, but coaching did. And I've also heard the opposite. I've been to coaching and it didn't help me. Well, that's because they needed a therapist. So we really do want to find the right match. Thanks for asking that. Good to see you, by the way.
You too. Do you know if there's any research on mindfulness meditation and how it can affect ADHD? Or
Yeah.
How it benefits it in any way? Like, can it make you more, I guess, neurotypical in a way?
Yeah, first of all, I know that you're asking for a specific reason. Do you want to share your experience? You can say no.
I don't know if you're asking, because I do it every day. I don't
Yeah.
know. Okay.
Do you feel like it helps you?
I don't know. I feel like if I were to know, it hasn't been like a while, but
Yeah.
I think I've seen I think there's research saying the more you do it, sorry, I'm having trouble articulating my thoughts, but
Well, I'm putting you in a spot, so.
yeah. I've been doing it for a couple of years, and like relatively speaking, that's not a really long time. So I have noticed, though, I guess living in the moment more has, I guess, I don't know if I have less mistakes or I'm feeling like I have less mistakes, I guess.
Yeah, so the research on this is incredibly promising. We can see the changes in the brain. Thank you for sharing your experiences. The reason I asked you is it's really hard for ADHD folks to meditate. The thought is just making some of you guys like, ooh, can we move on? And so you are a great example of kind of pushing through that uneasiness and learn it as a discipline. We can see the changes on an MRI, and the, I'm blocking, I have it brain card, just point to it. We can see a certain part of the brain thicken after years of meditation. And what happens in this case, the thickening is a good thing because it increases control over emotions, especially. And so when you said, I'm not sure if it helps me make less mistakes, it helps me be less sensitive to the mistakes I make. And when we slow down and are less sensitive to the mistakes we make, then we also get more confident and make less mistakes, and it goes up in that way. So thanks for asking that.
I was interested in the distinction between coaching and counseling, and I'm wondering how much of that distinction and understanding is getting to the school systems.
K-12 or so K-12, about every 7 or 8 years, I see like peer coaching coming up, and then I see the idea of counseling coming up, and so they really haven't gotten to the point of doing actual ADHD coaching. A lot of schools work on executive function coaching. And executive function, those are the things like strategic planning, thinking just beyond this second, those skills in life. The problem is, that's like teaching me how to lift weights with my pinky. This isn't the strongest muscle, and I can try to lift something, but eventually a pinky isn't going to work. So I'm hoping eventually in K-12 schools we can, get models of actually helping kids understand their ADHD. Well, thank you, everyone. You guys have been so awesome. I truly cannot thank you enough for showing up tonight. I know some of you just leaving the couch after work is a big deal. So you guys know who you are, and thank you for being here especially.